Hi, everybody. RivkaLeah here. How is everybody on this beautiful, wonderful Friday night? So I have been thinking about this all week, and I just again want to thank everybody for coming and say what I always say is I am not a doctor or a therapist. I talk about things that I've gone through or have happened in my life or the lives of my friends that they've given me permission to talk about. And tonight I wanted to talk about the pitfalls of trauma recovery and healing. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about a narcissist raising children. And we've touched upon this a little bit, throughout some of our other conversations. And how does a person become a narcissist? And I know I've said several times that it can happen. It starts as a child, and then, it progresses as the person ages. Um, it does not always mean that someone becomes a narcissist because they are raised by a narcissist, but that is one way. And that is what we will be talking about. Tonight as well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information, and then I have two stories. So I'll give you all the information first and then the stories, and we'll see how they relate back and forth to what I have told you about. So first, we're going to start with the pitfalls of trauma, healing, recovery. And, I've said it, you hear it out there, and a lot of the literature that you read is healing takes time, right? And it does. But just like time, healing is not linear. It just flows. And sometimes there's good days and sometimes there's bad days. So, what happens during our non-linear healing journey that can kind of derail us a little bit? Unrealistic expectations, because the path is not smooth. Anyone who says that their healing journey has been smooth is not giving you the full version of what has happened. Okay. Some other things, triggers, and they can be subtle triggers. It could be the smell of something, the sound of something, a word, and it can make you fall back into old patterns, right? And, again, all of these things, you would just wait. There's something that happened that I just was relayed to me that this fit every single one of these things that I'm talking about. And then, along our journey, we have some self doubt, we have shame. So this setback may come in and it brings up those negative emotions again, and it puts you back in that really traumatic, vicious cycle of, falling back into the old patterns and doing the old things that you used to do and getting stuck and being so upset. And then you feel guilty because you fell back into the old patterns. And so it's a cycle, right? And you can't get out of it. And then what is something else that happens with that, with all these pitfalls and traumas? And again, this can happen at any time along your journey, is something happens, you've been triggered, and then you feel shame. And then what do? Avoidance, isolation, you withdraw because you don't want to be around, because you're embarrassed about, feeling like you've let other people down when this is your journey that you want. So if you've not let anybody down. And then ultimately, the next thing that will happen is you start to neglect your self-care. And right, big, I talk about self-care all the time. Make sure that you're always taking care of yourself, doing the little things. I started this, Friday Night Lives talking about what I do on Friday nights. Friday nights has been for many, many years what I do for myself. It's my self-care night. I come home, I make a frozen pizza, not every week, but the frozen pizza, the movie. I spend time with my son who's here. I spend time with my dog. That's my self-care. That's my winding down the week. That's my getting ready for the weekend. It's just my time for me. So those are some of the pitfalls that we might find as we're going through our non-linear healing journey. Again, unrealistic expectations, triggers, self-doubt, shame, avoidance, isolation, neglecting self-care, all of those things. And most of us have experienced one or some, maybe even all of those at some point along our journey. And, you know, I like to say, remember what I told everybody, what I wake up to every day? It's a good day for a good day. And somebody reminded me of that just this week because something happened with me and I fell back into some old patterns and some old cycles. And I was very grateful for that individual who reminded me of that. Even though that morning, that very morning, I said it as I got up, but I was still feeling the shame and I was still trying to isolate a little bit because of what had happened. So all of these things happen and just to be aware of them and to give yourself some grace when some of that happens and try to get yourself back out of your head and back into your heart and give yourself that grace because it is not a linear journey. Okay. So that's one aspect of what I want to talk about tonight. And the second aspect of what I want to talk about tonight, and again, I'm going to give you all this information and then I'm going to give you two stories that have happened. And these are actual stories. They're not made up like I have made in the past, because even though they're made up stories in the past that I've given you, they are actually examples. And I'm sure they have happened to people. I just didn't, I used fictitious names. These two stories that I'm going to give you tonight are actual stories, and they both actually happened this past week. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was a narcissist raising a narcissist. Can that happen? Yes, it can happen. Narcissists typically form as small people and then they grow to big people. It does not mean that all narcissists were raised by narcissists, but in this instance, yes, that may be what is happening. So, how is a narcissist formed? Okay. Or when a narcissist is raising a child, how are they creating a narcissist? Right? A child, what does a child do? And we talked about this several weeks ago. Children learn from very young age. They start modeling the behavior, right? They learn by observation, they learn by imitation of their parents. And when a narcissist has a child, they then start to use the emotional manipulation and they'll start to guilt their child or gaslight their child because, right, what is a narcissist? A narcissist always has to play the victim. So they're teaching their child how to do that. And if there are two people, obviously, two people in this relationship, even if they're not together any longer, there are still two parents, and one parent may typically be more of an empathetic, more caring parent, and that parent may inadvertently enable the narcissist because they want to keep the peace, right? They don't want to make waves. They want the family to be calm. So the child, the little sponge child, is soaking all that up. They're modeling the behavior of the parent because they see that that parent is getting everything that they want, and the more empathetic parent is just trying to smooth things over so that things are calm. All right. And what's going to happen with that? What's going to happen to those little sponges that grow up into big people? They are going to have, and I'm going to read off all the things that are going to happen and then tell me what that sounds like. Low self-esteem, low self-worth, insecurity, anxiety, lack of empathy, attachment issues, approval seeking, and no boundaries. What are all of those things? All of those things are the main traits and characteristics of a narcissist. So a child, of course, it's damaging to a child. They have no self-esteem, but they have a grandiose sense of self. Even though they don't feel like they're worth it, they want to project to everybody else that they are worth more than anything else out there. And then they learn how to play that victim and they learn how to gaslight and they learn how to manipulate. So those are the two main topics that I want to talk about this week. And so now I want to get into two stories. The first story I'm going to talk about is Well, why don't we just stick with, because we're on this topic, and then I'll go back to the pitfalls. We'll stick with the narcissist raising a narcissist. So I have many people here in the collective who come to me and ask me questions, and they go out obviously into the collective and they ask other people questions, and they have their friends and their family, and they talk to all them and ask a ton of questions. So this individual is now separated from the other parent of their children. There are multiple children in the family. The children are now grown, and the parent that I happen to know is the more empathetic parent. The parent that they are away from is the narcissistic parent. The children, even though they are now grown, are starting to exhibit behaviors of the narcissistic parent. And why are they exhibiting those behaviors? Because they've watched this parent manipulate for many, many years. Because again, these children are grown. So we're talking, maybe into late high school, early college, grown. So they are basically fully formed, people at this point, and can make decisions for themselves. But they are now relying on all the information that they had up until that point. And they watched the narcissist parent manipulate situations, throw tantrums, gaslight the empathetic parent, and get what they wanted. Until the end, when the empathetic parent was like, this is not healthy for me. It's not healthy for the children. We need to take, a break. And that break turned into a split so that everybody, well, the empathetic parent could be healthy and go on their nonlinear healing journey, and hopefully get the kids some help and get them on a healing journey. The children, however, kind of ebb and flow a little bit because they've watched this narcissistic parent for all of their lives. They are now starting to exhibit some of the characteristics of a narcissist, and they are starting to now gaslight the empathetic parent because, right, they're adults or close to being adults. And so they want to, quote unquote, flex some muscle and show that they're independent. But unfortunately, because what was modeled to them growing up was not the appropriate way of handling situations, they are now taking out their anger, their anxiety, their insecurities out on the empathetic parent. And they have no empathy themselves. So they don't even realize that what they're doing is hurtful to the empathetic parent. And now the empathetic parent is struggling and starting to hit some of these pitfalls that we talked about. And although this story is not about the pitfalls, it does have some of these pitfalls in there, right? Because the empathetic parent really wants this healing journey to keep going, and they thought that they were doing really good. So maybe they had some unrealistic, expectations. Maybe they thought, hey, it's been, however long, I should be further along in my healing. And then, here's a bump in the road because one of the grown children has now kind of thrown a rock into the road, right? So that's kind of where that has gone. So yes, a narcissist can raise a narcissist. And that person being raised starts exhibiting, you guessed it, everything that I said, all of the narcissistic traits. So that was my first story for everybody. You may, depending on your situation, you may have seen some of these things. You may have experienced some of these things, but that's where we're at. And in this situation, and I say this all the time, if you need to get professional help, please get professional help. If your children need professional help, please get them that professional help. And continue to keep the lines of communication open, because even though these are grown children, they are still growing, right? So I believe it's like up to age 26 before a male child's brain is fully formed. So there's still time to get some help and maybe nip some of those characteristics or maybe tone them down a little bit. So there's something like that. So keep that in mind if you are the empathetic parent, or you're a child of a narcissist and you are exhibiting all of those, that maybe you were raised by a narcissist but you're not necessarily a narcissist, but you do have these characteristics that could turn into you becoming a narcissist. Please seek professional help, talk to people, and give yourself some grace, right? But so that was my first little story. Let me know in the comments if you can relate, if you have anything else you'd like to add to it. So my second story, and again, I'm going to try and not keep everybody real long. I know I'm rambling a little bit. We're already like 16 minutes in. So the second story I have on the pitfalls of recovery. And so this actually happened to me. And, I did not want to talk about this and let everybody know that it had happened to me. I was going to say that it had happened to somebody else, but I realized that I need to own this so that I don't continue to fall back into these same patterns, the same avoidance patterns that I had been in. So I happened to be out with some very good friends, and I got extremely ill. Food poisoning. It was not good. And we're out in public, and I was very upset because I was violently ill, and so now I'm embarrassed and I'm crying, and I am apologizing profusely to these individuals because I, in another life, would have been gaslit for that. I would have been made to feel guilty for ruining somebody else's evening because I got sick. It was as if I had purposely tried to get sick. We were 20 minutes away from a quote unquote safe space, where I couldn't get back to a place that was comfortable for me. So these individuals, lovely individuals, kept reassuring me. And I, of course, kept crying and kept apologizing over and over and over until my one friend very sternly, lovingly, but sternly told me to stop apologizing because I was not ruining their evening. We got back to where I was staying, and her husband went and got me some ginger ale, and I went and laid down, and she came in a little bit later to check on me, and she covered me with a blanket, and then she sat down and she talked to me for over an hour, just kept checking on me, making sure I was okay. And I was eternally grateful for her being there with me. So that triggered me because I remembered being in a situation like that where I said I was gaslit and I was made to feel terrible, even worse than I was physically feeling, because I ruined this other person's time. And I did what I always wanted to do. I withdrew into myself. I wanted to isolate. I wanted to avoid everything, and I couldn't because I was with people. I was in a completely different situation, right? I have done a ton of healing. I am not healed 100% because I don't believe anybody ever is healed 100%. I think there is always something that we can learn and heal and move forward with. So this kind of touches on the unrealistic expectations, right? Because I thought, hey, I've been healing and I have been on this path for multiple years. So I wouldn't think that something like that would have triggered me, but getting sick was a trigger to me. Something that I never in a million years would have thought would have been a trigger was a trigger. And then falling back into my old patterns, in my self-doubt and my shame and my keep apologizing for something that I had absolutely no control over, and then the avoidance. So, long story short here, they made sure I was okay. They made sure I was safe. They made sure I was taken care of. And I went to bed. The next morning, they came and checked on me. They made sure that they brought me some nice bland food to make sure that I could tolerate eating again. And they stayed with me the whole day. And they kept reassuring me that I did not do anything wrong, that I had no need to apologize. And my friend, again, very lovingly explained to me that I now have a new baseline. When something bad happens to me and I am with people who truly care about me, they understand and they will be there to support me. They're not going to make me feel bad. They're not going to gaslight me, but they're honestly going to be there to show me how much they care and to support me and to make sure that I have everything that I need so that I don't fall back into those old patterns. And again, I was so grateful to them for pointing that out to me. And these are things that I point out to other people. But right when it's happening to you, you forget because you get, completely separate from the situation. You just revert back into something that had been so instilled, so ingrained into you that you completely forget what you've learned in your healing. So I, again, have been eternally grateful for these individuals for showing me what honest friendship means, what true friendship means, what truly caring, giving people mean. And I am grateful to have people like that in my life now because I did not have that before. And they made a world of difference. And, this, after I left them, and I was still, feeling a little off, and I had a couple meetings planned. And because I was still not feeling quite right, and I was still fighting with myself in my head, and I was still triggered a little bit, even though I was grateful for everything that they did and how they showed me that I didn't need to be like that on a much smaller level. I was still reacting to those triggers. So I had two important meetings scheduled, and one I completely forgot about because I was still not well. And I should have reached out to this individual that I had a meeting with, and I didn't because mentally I was not in the game, right? And so that then triggered me again because in the past, had I forgotten something, I would have been spoken down to. I would have been made to feel like the world had come to an end, that the other person was irreparably upset with me. And I got into a very bad cycle, which the individual who messaged me telling me it's a good day for a good day is the one that snapped me out of it because I was saying some pretty mean things about myself. And I was saying those because those were the things that would have been said to me in the past. So I had two setbacks, one right after the other, one coming out of as a result of the first one. So this is kind of what I wanted people to be aware of. When you have a pitfall, sometimes it can trigger another one right on the heels, but you need to give yourself that grace, and you need to look around at the people that you now have in your life, because the people that you now have in your life on your healing journey are there for a reason. They are there to support you. They are there to give you the love and the respect that you deserve. So, to my second friend who snapped me out of it, I wanted to thank them. And, so that's what I wanted to talk to everybody about this week. Everyone's saying, we're human, be kind to yourself. Yes. And I was not being kind to myself. So I will reschedule my meeting. And I have, since that day, this was, I don't know, like Tuesday, I think, Wednesday. So my triggers have been going on since Saturday night. So almost a full week of my kind of being stuck um, in working through it. But I can honestly say those things will not happen again, because I have learned that lesson now. And I've learned that lesson because I have good people in my life now. So look around at the people that are there. Like I said, they are there for a reason, and thank them, embrace them, and realize that when they tell you you are not doing anything wrong, they truly mean it. They're not just telling you that to play lip service. They're telling you that because they mean it. So I want to leave you with that. I want everybody to know that you are in a good place now. You are in a safe place. You can always come into the collective, and people will be there to be your support system, to cheer you on, and to give you the respect that you need and that you deserve. So I hope everybody has a fabulous weekend. And again, if you are triggered, please feel free to come into the collective, and someone will be here for you. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Cheers.